So I have been knee-deep in cranberries the past several days. I've done a ton of recipes, a couple of canning recipes. One is my all-time favorite standby cranberry sauce recipe. Another one was new to me. We're going to try it today. And then I also had a request for some sugar-free dried cranberries. So those are a little bit trickier, but I do have a couple of options for you. I have tried, I think, 5 different versions of those, and some of them are laughably disastrous. But I do have a couple that worked pretty well. So we're going to talk about those today, and I'm going to show you my cranberry sauce canning recipe and one other that I found that I think is going to be terrific. So welcome to Grow and Preserve. I'm Carter, and I'm so glad you're here today. So let's get started. I filmed all of this while I was testing everything. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what I did for each recipe. I'm not going to take you through the recipes that did not work. And there were 3 of those. And in fact, hang on, I'll show you one. While we're talking about laughable cranberry results, let me show you this one. This is another one. Yeah, not exactly what I was going for. And this is by a source. I'm not going to tell you about it because, there's a possibility this could have been user error. But anyway, it's from a source. I've made several of their recipes before and I've never had a problem, but this was not what I was going for. So as you see down here, I did find much better options. So we're going to talk about those today, and I'll show you how I made those. And we'll just pretend that these don't exist here. All right, so I want to go through the cranberry sauce first, and I want to do a taste test. My normal one that I do has no pectin. It's kind of a, I don't know if you can see the set on that. It's a medium, I call it a medium set. You can see a little bit of movement in that, I hope. I'll try to zoom in on that if I can. And let me find the other one that's cold. And then this is the one with pectin. So this is a firm, full set on this one. So this is the one I always use. And I love it, it's terrific. But I also like a firm set cranberry sauce sometimes too, and I thought some of you might as well. So I found this one, it uses pomona pectin. I'm gonna bring you in close and we're gonna take a taste of these. Now both of these I put in the refrigerator last night. Not for set or anything, but because I prefer my cranberry sauce cold. So I didn't want to automatically have a bias against something because it wasn't cold. So I'm going to bring you in and we're going to try these. All right, these 2 didn't get their full label because they were in the fridge last night. But this one you can see says no pectin, and this one says nothing, so that one has pectin in it. So let's open these. I'm going to keep these a little bit separated here so we don't lose track. Okay, that one has no pectin. So you can see it just moves around a little bit. It's a pretty decent set. Let's take a look at it with a spoon. That's a pretty decent set there. It's very well gelled, nice and thick. This one is pectin, and this is Pomona's pectin. You can see that one is not going anywhere. So let's cut into this one. So that one it's a bit firmer when you pull it out, but it's not, as a kid we used to get those jars with the jellied cranberry and they just, did a little sucking sound as they popped out of the jar and you kind of ate it. It was like Jell-O consistency. This is not that. All right, we're going to try both of these. I will say that my usual one has some cinnamon in it, and I do really like it with cinnamon, so I'll try not to let that bias me. Let's take a taste. Oh, see, that one's delicious. I love that one, and that explains why I make it year after year after year. All right, this is the one with the pectin. Well, honestly, I don't taste that much difference in the consistency at all. This one is not as sweet, and I do miss the cinnamon in it. But it's a little bit firmer set, but not that much. Get a clean spoon. Okay, there's that one. That's a pretty decent hold. And that's a pretty decent hold. I don't know, I don't see that much difference between the pectin and the no pectin. It's more the flavoring. This one had more allulose in it, and it had that cinnamon that I like. So let's go through. I'm going to show you how to make both of these, and you can pick your preference. Okay, the first one we're going to do is the one that I always make. This is the one with no pectin. It adds cinnamon. So this one originally came from a website called Never Free Farm. The original recipe on this one made 6 8-ounce jars. I'm going to give you a small batch version on this one to make sure that you like it, because it does use quite a bit of allulose. And as you probably know, allulose is pricey. So let's make sure you like it before you decide to use it. The other thing I will say is that this recipe originally used sucralose, and I don't use sucralose. It's, you know, it's one of those things that's approved for canning, but it's approved for canning because someone paid for it to be studied to be approved for canning. It is not necessarily one that is healthy. So the USDA approved it for canning, but all the studies now are coming out that it's not the healthiest thing for you. So I choose to use allulose. I said the small batch version I'm going to give you, and the one you're going to see in the video, is a quarter of the recipe. So it made for me 3 quarter-pint jars. So I used 1 cup of water, 1 cup of allulose, a tiny pinch of sea salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a 1/2 pound of fresh cranberries. You want to combine those first 4 ingredients, the water, the allulose, the sea salt, and the ground cinnamon. Bring that to a boil and let it boil for 5 minutes. Make sure that the allulose is dissolved. Then we're going to throw in your washed and sorted cranberries, and then we're going to bring it back to a boil for 15 more minutes. They're going to start to burst. You're going to start to see them thicken up as that pectin develops in there. We're going to fill hot jars to a 1/4 inch headspace. Then we're going to process them in a water bath or steam canner for 15 minutes. I used my steam canner for this, so I actually had them processed for 15 minutes, turned off the burner and let it sit with the lid on for 5 minutes, and then remove the jars. If you're using a water bath canner, you want to process it for 15 minutes, turn off the burner, lift off the lid, and let them sit for 5 minutes, and then you can take them out. So either way, they all sealed absolutely beautifully. They all taste fantastic. I don't know, it's my favorite. If you try it, you let me know if you like that. All right, let's move on to the one with the pectin. So this next recipe using Pomona's pectin is from a website called healthycanning.com. It's not an official Pomona pectin recipe, if there is such a thing. So it's written a little bit differently than the recipes in the Pomona pectin cookbook. You know, in that cookbook, everything you have to measure out 4 cups of something. And then you get 4 to 5 8-ounce jelly jars of finished product. So this one, there was no measuring the cooked down cranberry sauce. So it did save a step, saved an extra dish. I was a bit concerned it wasn't going to work, but it seems to work just fine. You know, as I mentioned, it's not a super hard set. Okay, so let me run through this recipe for you, and I'll give you some footage of how it went. So 3 cups of cranberries, and these can be either fresh or frozen. 1½ cups of water, 1½ teaspoons of Pomona pectin, 1 teaspoon of calcium water, and that is something that comes in the box of Pomona pectin. So if you buy the little blue box, or if you buy it bulk order, or however you do your Pomona pectin, in there will be a little package with instructions on how to mix the calcium water. And I have calcium water in my refrigerator that has been floating around, my goodness, for 7 or 8 months. And it can really float around your refrigerator indefinitely as long as it stays refrigerator. And then this recipe is a low sugar version. It uses a 1/2 cup of white sugar. Well, in all of the Pomona's pectin recipes in their cookbook and on their website, I've never used any sugar in mine. I always substitute with allulose, and I've never had any issues with things not setting or not working right or not tasting right or whatever. You may want to add a little more allulose than you add sugar, because as you probably know, it is only 70% as sweet as sugar. So you might want to adjust up a bit on your allulose. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to wash those cranberries, get rid of any that looked kind of rough. And, you know, quite frankly, in my cranberries this year, there were a lot that looked pretty rough. All right, then we're going to put those cranberries and the water into a stainless steel pot, put it on the stove, bring it to a boil, and let it simmer for about 10 minutes until those cranberries are softening and popping. We're going to remove it from the stove. Now this is where my process differed from theirs a little bit. They got a little convoluted, taking out some of the cranberry pulp, putting it in a bowl, whisking in the pectin, adding a dollop. I don't know, that was a bit much for me. So as I always do when I'm using Pomona's pectin, I mixed my pectin very well into the allulose. Just stir it around. Stir it around is absolutely fine. While that is sitting there waiting for you, add the calcium water into the pot with the cranberry and water. Then put it back on the stove, bring it to a full boil, and then we're going to add that sugar pectin or allulose pectin mixture to the cranberry sauce very slowly. So a couple spoonsful at a time would be absolutely fine. Get it in there, make sure that everything dissolves, that there are no clumpies. Allulose doesn't clump, but you don't want that pectin to clump up. So if it is really well dispersed in the allulose, you won't have any problem as long as you stir it in really well. And then we're going to let it really kind of go at a full boil for another minute. You do get, I find with this one, a little bit of foam on top. I didn't worry about it. You saw it when I opened the jar. It really wasn't anything to speak of. But you're going to ladle it into hot jars, same way we did before, so 1/4 inch headspace. And then you're going to process in a water bath canner or a steam canner for 15 minutes. Now the recipe says 10 minutes, but I've always used 15 minutes for cranberry sauce, and all the recipes that I saw, because that one kind of caught me off guard, I looked up several others and they all have 15 minutes. So that's what I choose to do. Recipe says 10, you know, pick what makes you feel really good about it. But with something like this, I find no difference in consistency, taste, anything in 10 to 15 minutes. So if 15 minutes is the tried and true method, I'm going to take 15 minutes. So that's what I did. So I want to pop in here with one note. This video is posting on December 9th, 2023. If you're watching this the day it comes out or maybe the day after, don't forget that the special promotion of 30% off Nakano Knives runs through December 10th. If you use my code or my link, I'll put those down below. You know that they've given me several knives to try. I have loved them so much that I bought my own knives during this sale. So I just bought them a couple of days ago, so I don't have them here yet. But I bought the set of 3 paring knives. I'll put the link to that down below. I am so excited to get them, and you'll see them in a future video. But I did want to remind you that you only have until December 10th for that 30% off discount to be in effect. So don't forget to use my code, and thank you. We'll go back to cranberries. All right, let's move on to the dried cranberries. So I'm going to bring you down here and take a look and give you my initial thoughts about these, and then we'll go through how I made each of the recipes. All right, both of these recipes are from websites that I go to often. The authors of these are women for whom I have bought their cookbooks. I do a lot of their recipes. They're fantastic. So in my opinion, they're both good. Neither one is perfect. So let me kind of give you my thoughts about this one. This one is from Wholesome Yum. So I will link this recipe down below. Maya Cramp is her name, Wholesome Yum. These worked out, some of them worked out fine. And some of them had a, you know, they're kind of stuck together a bit. Most of them are pretty decent shape. This one's going to be crunchy. I'll try this, see if you can hear it. That's a crunchy cranberry. Not really what I'm thinking when I want my cranberries dried. But I think that there's probably a fix for that. So we'll talk about that in a minute. You can see both of these recipes use oil. I hope you can see maybe the oil on my hands. This one uses 1 tablespoon of avocado oil. This one is done a different way, and it uses 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. So I think that the consistency on these is good. However, they are messy. Well, that one was a little bit crunchy. But most of these have a pretty decent consistency. Chewy, like you would want a dried cranberry to be. But the oil on these is pretty intense. And when I pulled these out to kind of dry, you can see that there's a lot of oil left on my paper towel. Several of them stuck to the paper towel because it was so sticky. And even worse, or crazier, this is the pan that they came off of. That's a lot of oil. There was very little oil residue on the other one. So I think somewhere between this one and this one on oil is the right way to go. And I think that there's an extra step we can take in here to make sure that we get a better consistency where everything is chewy rather than crunchy. See, most of these are chewy, and most of these are a bit crunchy. Let's see if I can find a chewy one. No, that one was even crunchy. Okay, so I have some ideas on this. So I'm going to walk you through how I did each one of these. And we're going to do some combination of the two to come up with something I think is going to be better. So let's talk about Maya's first. This is from Wholesome Yum. Again, fantastic. Love her recipes, love her cookbooks. Everything that I've had from her has actually been quite good. So let's talk about this one. All right, so she used 12 ounces of cranberries. She says fresh or frozen and thawed. I used fresh ones. And then she uses something called Bestie Powdered Monk Fruit Allulose Blend. I just use my regular allulose. She uses a half cup, and she used 1 tablespoon of avocado oil. So she did this in the oven. In fact, both of these recipes were dried in the oven. And I chose to do it that way because not everybody has a dehydrator. And it kind of promised me that I was looking at more like 3, maybe 4 hours to dry these rather than, 12 to 16 in a dehydrator. Well, I don't know, that was a little misleading. It actually took about 12 hours for each of these. It may have been my oven that caused the problem, but these took me just as long as they would have taken in a dehydrator. So feel free to do it at a dehydrator if you would like. But her directions say to preheat the oven to 225. Bring a pot of water to a gentle boil. Remove from heat and then add the cranberries. It says do not boil them. Set aside for 10 minutes. They will soften and start to pop. Well, I had to do that 3 times. Literally, I had to take the pot of cranberries back to the stove 3 times, heat it up. I didn't let it come to a boil because she was very specific about that, but I did kind of let it simmer just a little bit. And it took 3 times doing that to get the cranberries to pop. Next step is to drain the water from the cranberries as soon as they have popped and transfer to a large bowl. That's where you add your avocado oil. Now remember, this is 1 tablespoon of avocado oil in this one, and I just took a spoon, as you can see, and mixed it up. Felt like I was coating everything reasonably well. And then you add the allulose and mix that up. So it took a solid 12 hours. I just left it on overnight. I did take it down to 175 when I went to bed, just to be sure I didn't, really kill anything in there. But I don't know. You have all of this, and maybe that's because I popped them too much, maybe with the 3 tries, but I just wanted them to pop it all. And literally they were not popping. They were just not popping on their own. So I kept taking them back to the stove. So some of that may be my error, but that's what we have there. So these are not as sticky. They are sticky, but they're not as sticky and they're not as oily as these. All right, let's talk about the next version then. This is Carolyn Ketchum's version. And she is All Day I Dream About Food. She's cute, adorable, great cookbook. I love many of her recipes. So this one I'm actually going to tell you the look of the cranberries, the feel of the cranberries, the chew of the cranberries. This one is my favorite. However, I think there's way too much oil on these. So let me walk you through what the instructions say and how I did these, and then I'll give you a couple of ideas on how we might make these a little less oily yet still have good results. She uses 12 ounces of fresh cranberries, 1/3 of a cup of Swerve confectioners. Now, I don't use Swerve confectioners. Again, I used allulose. The brand of allulose I use is very, very fine, just like a confectioner sugar. There are some brands that are not as fine, so you may want to stick those in a blender, whip it up. She also used 1 cup of allulose powdered version. Again, mine suited just fine as a powdered version. So I just used in total 2/3 of a cup of allulose. And then she used 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. So her instructions say to preheat the oven to 200. There's no cooking of the cranberries beforehand. There's no waiting for them to pop. There's none of that. So it says cut them in half and toss in a bowl with the sweeteners and the oil. You know, it takes a while, or at least it took me a while to chop these. But I think for the product that you get, I would probably choose to do that again over messing around with trying to get them to pop just the right amount. She says to place it in the oven and let it dry for 3 hours or longer. And, you know, as I mentioned, that or longer part was really quite key. So she says to store these in the refrigerator in an airtight container. Some of you will feel fine just leaving them in the pantry. And while I would like my dried cranberries to be shelf stable, I'm probably going to stick them in the refrigerator. So the oil was the part that was really bothering me about all of this. So I wanted to try to find a way to not use the oil. And I thought, well, you know, when I make my homemade granola, I use a liquid allulose. It's kind of syrupy like. It kind of, I don't know, it just kind of holds it all together. I put it in the dehydrator, it comes out great. So I thought, well, let me try that. Well, no. No, don't even think about trying that, because the part about it works like glue to hold my granola together was the part that I just kind of skipped over. So yes, it turned to glue. This is what you come up with with the liquid allulose. I don't know if you can see it from this far away, but it is literally kind of glued to that sheet. So that was a singularly bad idea. I spent a good amount of time laughing at myself over that one. So I thought you might enjoy the laugh as well. So the question is, will I do this again? Yes, absolutely. I would do this one again with the modification of reducing the oil. And instead of just tossing them with a spoon, I would get in there and massage with my hand, try to get that oil in all the crevices, because once you cut a cranberry in half, there are a lot of crevices. You know, not like a pomegranate, but same kind of theory, right? There are lots of crevices where you need to get the oil to make sure that it comes out soft and pliable and chewy, because that's what we want. We don't want hard and crunchy. So I would do this one again, start with a tablespoon of avocado oil, maybe try a tablespoon and a quarter, tablespoon and a half if you have to, but 2 tablespoons is really, I think that's really overkill. So that's my thoughts for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope if you are keto, you're low carb, you're diabetic, you're watching your sugar, you're counting calories, whatever it is, I hope that this allows you to enjoy some cranberries during this season. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.